Hey everybody, welcome to our next webinar for Century hosting through our Century Cares program and our educational program specifically. So I'm here today with Graham Thompson from Century, but our big guest today is Dan Mabey from Big Orange Heart. How are you today, Dan?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and give me an opportunity to come and have a chat with both of you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So it's great to have you here. Graham, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good, thank you. So I'm over here in the U.S. Both of you are over in the U.K., so it's a little earlier in the day for me than it is for both of you. So I'm still a little more chipper. Maybe you're towards the end of your day, but I promise I'll keep it light and lively for you. Our topic of the day today is how to give back to the remote community, and I could think of no better person to talk about what remote workers deal with and the emotional and mental stresses that remote workers go through, and then also how we can help that community, whether it be individuals or the community as a whole, than our guest today, Dan Mabey. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you talk a little bit about what you do at Big Orange Heart and give us some ideas, and I promise I'm going to ask a lot of questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. As you mentioned, I'm Dan Mabey. I'm the founder of Big Orange Heart. Used to formerly WPN Up, just to confuse people a little bit. Big Orange Heart is a charity that supports and promotes positive well-being and mental health for remote working communities. So, the efforts that we do are fit squarely in the topic that we're talking about this afternoon or this evening. The remote working community is a community that has huge positives, huge benefits to it. The ability to work remotely is an incredible opportunity for many, many people. But it's not without its pitfalls. It's not without its issues that, unfortunately, many, many people have been suffering with. And obviously, we've been forced into a situation at a global level that has, seen millions of people have to adopt this remote working lifestyle. And there's been a knock-on effect that we've seen as a charity. We've seen many, many people struggling with the isolation, the issues that working on your own can bring. So it's certainly been some challenging times for many, many people.
Yeah, COVID has forced people who weren't remote workers to become remote workers. So the remote community just skyrocketed as far as the population. And absolutely. I imagine that the call for services has as well then.
Totally, yes. I mean, we initially when we moved into this environment where we saw a huge increase in individuals working remotely. We saw more than a 300% increase in demand on the service. So individuals reaching out to us in a relatively short space of time. So it really did demonstrate that this is, individuals were moved and forced into a situation that they may not necessarily have been prepared for in their working environment. It can be a real shock if you're used to that, that office environment. You've got individuals around you all the time. You've got the ability, just to, bounce ideas back and forth. You're verbalizing things with your work colleagues. You may not even realize or recognize that you're actually, letting off a lot of that mental energy just simply by having a conversation, or simply just for having that conversation with a colleague. But of course, that can, if you're not careful, can suddenly be taken away if your working environment isn't set up for you to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah, the virtual water cooler isn't quite the same as just stopping by somebody's desk.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. It's important creating that. If you're an employer, if you're an employee, even, I mean, we can take the responsibility on ourselves as employees to create that virtual water cooler. It may not necessarily be as effective, but it's better than nothing. And that's something that we've been very much a strong advocate of through this period. It's this isn't an ideal situation for anyone by any stretch of the imagination. So we're continually having to look for good enough at this stage.
Right. Of course, the flip side is nobody's stealing your lunch out of the community refrigerator either.
As we said, there are a lot of benefits to working from home.
We're taking a good coffee.
Unless you have toddlers who maybe are just helping themselves. I don't know.
Very true.
So we know that there's struggles that remote workers deal with, and we've known this before because working from home is not, or working remotely is not new. Of course, it's just that we've seen a balloon effect in the number of people who are doing that. So, what are some things that you think remote workers, number one, could do for themselves to help themselves through this? Do you have some tips or tricks that might be useful?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as I said, that we need to take personal responsibility across this as well. It, you know, prior to this, the teams having that that ability to come together remotely, within the WordPress space, we would see it often where remote companies, would have these annual, biannual gatherings. Actually bring the teams together, so you're actually in person with your work colleagues. It's so easy in the remote working environment to be working with individuals that you may never actually meet in person. So that, unfortunately, obviously, in this current climate, that's not advisable. It's not something that we can be doing. So, looking for remote opportunities to come together, and having a Zoom call open, or a Skype call, or whatever platform you choose to use, having a water cooler call open in the background, for people just to dip in and out of, is one thing that we've seen many people doing through this period, because just simply having somebody there, just as I said, when you're sat at your desk in an office, often you'll verbalize things without even realizing it. So having the ability to do that on virtually is a real positive step that people can take.
Yeah, kind of like virtual co-working, if you will. Yeah. I've done that a few times myself. I know that some people are getting fatigued by the constant online meetings, but it's still preferable to just sitting by yourself. Right?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I mean, this is a real issue that we've certainly, as a charity, we've come up against. We've seen individuals that were very, very, very proactive, or very active initially, jumping on calls, being part of. We run regular calls through the charity. We call them open chats and various other opportunities to bring the community together virtually, and we've seen uptakes and drop-offs in terms of numbers of people doing it, because we're all in this situation right now where we're all doing it through virtual calls, and obviously that can become challenging, because it's ultimately not the same as being in person with somebody, but as you said, much better than having nothing at all.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I was on a call with you earlier today
for
the charity. So it's the second time today I get to see your smiley face.
Always a pleasure to be on a call with you.
Absolutely. I feel the same. So what do you think are some things that we can do for each other? So before we even talk about like what we can do for the community as a whole, and what we can do for Big Orange Heart and other organizations like that, are there things that I can do if I notice perhaps that a friend has not been themselves or not showing up as much? What are some things that we can do to help people?
Well, that I mean, what you just said there is the first step. Actually noticing that somebody's not necessarily behaving in the way that they would normally behave. I appreciate that's very, very difficult in this current climate, because a lot of individuals' personality, the way they interact, and the decisions whether we're going to be online or not are impacted by the fact that we're spending a lot more time online at the moment. But just certainly looking for signals or signs that individuals might not be interacting in the way that they usually do. And a very, very powerful question is, how are you? Simply opening up that door to have a conversation, and not necessarily pressing. I mean, something that we need to be very aware of when we're having conversations with individuals in relation to well-being and mental health, is ensuring that you are an active listener. You're starting this conversation because you might have a concern for that individual, so take the time to actively listen to what that individual is saying. If you've been able to open up the door for them to be able to have a conversation with you, it's a real strong it's incredible what you can do for that individual if they know they are being listened to.
I think of my, I obviously I work for Sentry because I'm here, but most people also know that I work for Give WP. And in our Slack channel, I will often just reach out to people who I don't speak to on a regular basis and just say, hey, just checking in, how are you? And I think I'm known as the work mom now. But I'm okay with the title, right? So just checking in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That opportunity just to see how people are doing, and you just never know what you're going to enable another person to do by simply opening up the conversation. And you can do it through a Twitter DM, you can do it through through an email, you can do it through a phone call, through a text message. There are many mediums and many ways. We're incredibly well connected these days. So just a simple question of how are you is, as I say,
I think that's a great way of phrasing it as well, because it's quite open. And I think it's really important when you're asking people how they're doing, or even having a conversation with them, or you're concerned about them, is having open questions, not saying, are you good? Because that suddenly narrows, they have to be good or not good. So having, how are you, the option is there to say that they're not doing so well.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I mean, something like, I hope you're doing well, or I hope all's well. It comes out very innocent, but actually you are guiding that, and you're setting an expectation on that individual that you're having that conversation with.
As opposed to just leaving it open-ended like that. Yeah. And I will say Graham checks on me frequently, twice a week at least. He's saying, how are you, Michelle? And I appreciate that very much. It gives me an opportunity to kind of tell somebody how I'm doing.
Sure.
But what do you do if their response is bleak? So let's say that you talk to somebody and they're really not doing well, but you don't have the ability to know how to respond to that. What are some ways that as caregivers or carers that we can respond to somebody who's not doing so well?
Well, the absolute first thing is knowing your own limits. If you do not have any training, if you do not have any experience in relation to the messages that are coming back to you, then really understand your own limits before you take that any further forward. It's very easy to want to try and fix somebody, but that's not the solution. That's not the route to be taking. If you're not in a position where you are educated or experienced or trained in that, then look for the most appropriate solution. As you speak with an individual, if you realize that the conversation is heading in a direction that you're uncomfortable with, or maybe you just don't simply know how to respond, then let them know that you've heard them. Let them know that you've heard their question or their fears, or whatever it is that you happen to be hearing. But then let them know that you need to either signpost to a more appropriate route for them to get help, or don't simply try and fumble your way through it, and certainly don't try and fix them. It's that mentality of, oh, I'm hearing that you're upset, so I'm going to do everything I can to try and make you happy again. It may not be the most appropriate way of dealing with that situation.
It does happen. It doesn't happen often, thank goodness, that we hear about it anyway. But it does happen that people become so despondent that they are threatening suicide. And if that was something that somebody said to you, what's the appropriate response in that case?
So in the first instance, it's ensure your own personal safety. So make sure that you're not in a vulnerable situation personally. So obviously in this climate, we're not often in cases where we are face to face, but obviously, scenario, you're at a bridge, for example, and this individual is threatening. You need to make sure that you're not in a situation where you're going to accidentally end up being pulled over if that individual does decide to take their life. So your personal safety is the utmost of importance. And then, of course, once you're in a safe environment, once you're in a safe position, it's then listening to that individual. Now, what we really need to ensure we're doing is giving that individual responsibility. You're not there to take that individual's responsibility away. It's ultimately their decision. It's ultimately their choice. Now, if you are there as an active listener, if you are there to be that person that they can be open and honest with, and if they are still they're still determined to make that choice, then that's their choice. And this is something that we need to be very, very careful of, because it's very, very easy to think, right, you don't want to die, so I'm going to save you. But actually, all you're doing is making that individual less responsible for themselves, and that's not a good. That's obviously no good for them longer term. Should they then choose to if you save them and you
Mm-hmm.
pull them back from the edge of the bridge, but actually you may have caused longer term issues for them. So it's a very, very difficult situation. And certainly if you're in that situation, then please seek professional help. Now, there are many, many charities out there that you can turn to. If the situation warrants it, then contact emergency services, but it just depends on the situation.
Yeah. Allie says she can't stand it when someone tries to give her unsolicited advice to fix her problems, but listening is so key. And I think that's the message that you're giving us here too, is that we can't fix people's problems, but we can certainly be an ear and listen to them for sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. So what are ways that we can give back to the community as a whole? I know money is always helpful, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but what are some other ways that we can volunteer and things that we can do to help further causes?
So I think the volunteering is a really great opportunity. The benefit of volunteering, there's twofold. You obviously the charity or the organization that you're volunteering for gets the benefit of your skills, of your time, of your energy, of your inputs, which obviously helps move that organization forward, move that entity forward, which is fantastic. But of course, you as an individual can then benefit as well. If you are maybe starting out in a career, then it's a great opportunity to get some experience. And if you can give some time, if maybe you're starting in graphic design and you want to give some time to hone your skills a bit, and you work with a team that have have a bit more experience, but you're not there as an employee, you're there as a volunteer, so you're able to give whatever you can give. And I mean, one thing I would say is that route of volunteering is incredibly important, and to many degrees is more important than financial support of charities, because the charities, non-profits need people to enable them to continue to deliver their services. But it's also that ability to gain that experience as if you're looking to further your skills.
Yeah, absolutely. There are ways that we can contribute as well, as far as I'm just putting my own 2 cents in there. And I don't know if everybody knows, but I am a volunteer with Big Orange Heart, formerly WP It Up. And that started because I was like, I have an article that I'd like to submit to you. Maybe it would be helpful to you. And it was, and you published it. And I was like, well, I'm hooked now. So, but there are ways, but
that's the thing, and the ability to come together as a team, and there's camaraderie, there's things that develop as you as you start to volunteer, and you never know what opportunities volunteering is going to potentially lead on to as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the ways that we can help also is to share in social media things that we are finding helpful for our own mental health. So whether that's tweets and posts from Big Orange Heart, whether that's the tiny Buddha things that go out all over the place, and those kinds of things, if we find those kinds of things helpful, then certainly it's contributing towards other people's benefit. But then also to contribute towards Big Orange Heart in sharing the mission of what we do there, by sharing socially as well, and just kind of spreading the word, I think is also super important.
Absolutely. There really are many, many ways to get involved and to support organizations and to give back to the communities. And the beauty of what we're talking about, the well-being, it affects every single one of us. There isn't an individual that isn't impacted by well-being in one way, shape or another. So we all have a level of understanding. We all have a level of experience around it. So, going back to the very simple "How are you?" question, right through to becoming a full-on volunteer and adopting, spending a lot of time within the charity. There's such a wide range of ways to be able to give back to an organization like Big Orange Heart without it having to be a direct financial payment into the organization.
Although donations are gladly accepted.
Yes.
Absolutely, anytime. What are some of the ways that Big Orange Heart helps? So I know that there's different, I keep calling them buckets, and I know that's not right. I think, what is the term that you use? I can't remember. Hubs?
Hubs, yeah. So
Hubs,
we have the 4 health hubs.
yes. Talk a
So
little bit about those.
yeah, so the 4 health hubs, I mean, they hop back to our original thought processes around WPN Up, and the work that we were doing there, and the information, what we were receiving from the community. So we look at business health, our skills health, our physical health, and our mental health, and we look at each one individually. But of course, all 4 have a direct impact across our mental health. Now, the health hubs do continue to exist within Big Orange Heart, but we're slightly evolving what they look like and how they deliver, because we want to create a slightly more unified approach in terms of our support mechanisms. So whilst we're still creating and pushing out information and support in relation to the individual health hubs, so looking at business health, looking at skills health, looking at our physical health, the overarching focus of mental health is a key focus for Big Orange Heart, because as a charity we need to make sure that we are using our time and resources responsibly, because we need to make sure that the limited expenses, limited funds that we have, are used and utilized in a way that is the most appropriate for the community and for the individuals that need the support. So looking at that, those 4 hubs it's the all-round package for the individual. We were listening to the community as people were coming through, and the challenges they were facing. It was just a repeating story we were hearing, that we'd see individuals that were absolutely fantastic developers, for example, and they were doing, they'd gone off to be a freelance developer, and they were incredibly skilled at that. But of course, going off freelance and running your own business, there are so many other skills that are needed, and this is where we were seeing this reoccurring pattern of individuals that needed more support in other areas of their business and other areas of their skills. And of course, there's a direct correlation between our physical health and our mental health.
Yeah. So Ellie has a question for us. Let me put this up on the screen here. She says, how do you protect your own mental health and peace of mind if you're struggling, but somebody else opens up to you about their struggles? So what kind of advice might you have for that?
That's a great question. Hey, Ali, thanks so much for joining us. It's a really difficult one, because obviously we need to make sure that we are healthy ourselves before we can really start to support others. And that's something I personally have struggled with, because WPN Up, then Big Orange Heart, they don't exist because I hadn't experienced them. I've gone through my own personal challenges, and I still do go through my own personal challenges in relation to mental health. So there are times when I have to step back and say, look, I'm actually not doing okay myself, so it's not right for me to try and support others. And there are instances where actually it's easier to fix somebody else than to fix yourself. So that is something that we have to be very, very aware of. And actually, it might not be right for you to support that individual if you yourself are not right in a healthy position to be able to support them. As difficult as that is to hear for some people, it might be the right thing for you to step back and say, you know what, actually, maybe I should be signposting you to this charity. Maybe I should be signposting you to this professional mental health service, as opposed to me trying to take it on, because you know what, I've got my own challenges right now in relation to mental health.
Exactly. And just so you know, Ellie did say hi. Hey, Dan, back to you as well. Those are all really good advice for sure. I was an EMT for years, earlier in my life, and the first thing you do is your personal protection, because if you approach any situation and get harmed, now there's 2 patients or more. So you really do have to protect yourself first, and then go from there, for sure. One of the things I know that we're doing in Big Orange Heart is building communities where people can be together. So I'm going to pop that link up specifically, but talk a little bit about the different communities that we have where people can actually support one another and share their burdens, so to speak.
Sure. So our Slack community has really been our hub, has been our home for quite some time now. It's been an incredibly supportive community. The community itself has many opportunities for people to express themselves in various different ways. We actually have within there a How Are You channel, and the concept around that channel is, it enables people to actually put a number. So between 1 and 10, I know some people don't like a numerical reference, but for others, it's actually been a really freeing experience, because they've been able to simply put a number up to express their feelings, their emotional state in that moment, without having to then dive any deeper into what's actually happening. Now, obviously, some people choose to elaborate on that experience. I might have a 7, and I'm, that's because I'm having a reasonably good day, and this is happening, and that's and that's why. But for some, it just simply posting a number is, for them in that moment, it's enough to be able to then release or to celebrate. It goes both ways. We have, obviously good and bad experiences and emotions being shared across that channel.
Yeah.
But it's also the home for our life groups and other smaller groups, which are, opportunities for very limited numbers of individuals to come together and really start to build a strong bond and a strong support circle within that. So there's been incredible feedback given to us as an organization in relation to that style of that, those very small support circles, and having the ability to be able to turn to your life group to discuss things in a safe and secure way, and knowing that's a very kind of trusted circle. Which
Absolutely.
I'm going to interject there. I think one of the things that I really liked about Slack channels, and I hadn't really considered before, was the custom emojis. Teddy bear hugging, all that sort of thing. Just little differences like that you can customize, can make a really big difference and allow you to kind of express yourself in a way that's not out of the box.
Yeah, Graham said to me, "Can we get that teddy bear emoji in our Slack channel?" I said, "Watch me work some magic. I can make that happen."
Fantastic.
Excellent. Yeah.
So I did put the link for joining. So can you talk a little bit about the process to become part of the community?
Yeah, sure. So we've got, as I said, there's the Slack community, which is kind of the heart of the community at this stage. But we also have our Facebook group as well, Big Orange Heart /group/ Big Orange Heart, surprisingly. But the bigorangeheart.org/join link that's up there, you will actually receive an invite into our Slack community, but then you will also receive an invite into our Facebook group. So it's the kind of one place to head, and you'll have that invite into both communities, and then obviously from that point you can pick and choose which is your preference, or you can be in both. It's entirely up to you.
How much does it cost to join?
Sorry?
And how much does it cost to join?
Absolutely nothing.
That's right, it's free.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. No, we've always wanted to try and open up our community and make sure that people are able to access Big Orange Heart and what Big Orange Heart does as easily as possible, but in the most safest possible way. And we've not been particularly active around the use of Facebook, because obviously for the topic that we're dealing with, it's something that we need to be very sensitive in relation to. So we needed to look at how we can set up safe processes to get individuals into that Facebook group. So we've now achieved that. We feel we've achieved that with the route that we now have. Unfortunately, if you head over directly to the Facebook group and hit join, you're going to be asked to head back over to bigorangeheart.org/join, because we want to make sure that people have all the information before they become a member, before they interact. We have safeguarding policies in place for a reason.
I want to ask a little bit about that. So one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is destigmatizing mental health issues, right? So obviously we want everybody to have positive mental health, but that doesn't negate the fact that sometimes we do have other issues in our lives. So, and I've been very public about the fact that I deal with anxiety, and I've dealt with and still do some, less so now, but still deal with depression as well. And believe it or not, my anxiety, I know I come across as this incredible extrovert, but I'm actually an extroverted introvert. And so for me to do some of the things I do requires a lot of energy. And so I'm public about that, because I think it's important for other people to know you can be a normal human being and still deal with some mental health issues. Now, that said, I don't think it's healthy for every single person out there to just force themselves to to say publicly that they deal with mental health issues or not. That's absolutely a personal decision.
Mhm.
So I'm not proposing that everybody do that. But what are some ways do you think that we can destigmatize that to make it easier for people to join groups and access help and ask for help?
Mhm. It's again a great question, and such an important one. There is a need to destigmatize. Unfortunately, we are still in a situation where there are very high levels of stigmatization. Many countries it is reducing, and many countries we are having more open conversations, but not at a global level. And there is still a lot of work to be done to bring that down and to bring that barrier down for people. Similarly, I would never encourage everyone to start suddenly talking about all of their deep and darkest personal issues, because there is a time and place to deal with some of these issues, and seeking professional help in relation to some of those issues is absolutely the right way to go and the right way to deal with it. Now, I would definitely say talking about mental health, that doesn't necessarily mean talking about your personal mental health, but simply talking about mental health is by far the greatest and easiest way for us to bring that stigmatization down, because we need to make sure that it is a normal conversation. We need to normalize the way we talk about our mental health as we do about our physical health. And
Absolutely.
there's been a lot of positive work in relation to that being done, but there's always more that needs to be done.
And there are still people out there making it difficult, of course. When the first time I started taking medication for depression, somebody at my church actually said to me, "You shouldn't be taking medication, just pray because God will heal your mind." And I said, "If you had pneumonia, would you take antibiotics?" And she said, "Well, of course I would." I said, "Same thing." So, because we really do need to appreciate other people's positions and ability to seek help and get it where they can, and then not, of course, demonize them for that.
Absolutely, yes, yep. Unfortunately, that your experience there is not an uncommon experience. That's we do need to relate mental health to physical health, because there is no difference. We physically and mentally hurt.
That's right.
Physically and mentally can be well. So we need to just things like you're doing right now. This opportunity to be able to come and have this conversation, push this out, and if one individual thinks, what, actually, I do need to have a conversation about my mental health, then we've done well. We just simply having these conversations and opening up the ability for people to be able to talk about mental health in a safe environment, in a safe way, is by far the greatest thing we can do at the moment in relation to reducing the stigma.
Absolutely. I'm going to put this link up. Go ahead.
Do you think, or have you come across different challenges with teams that work at greater distances rather than, so Sentry, we're based in the US and I'm in the UK. Do you think there are different challenges for teams that are spread out more on a global level rather than working in a specific country? And also in regards to mental health, are there certain approaches or things that you can do to be aware of cultural differences in approaching mental health as well?
It's a great question.
Yes. So do you mean in relation to a remote team that might be within the same locale, so a remote team across the UK, for examul?
Or, I mean, obviously that could be work related, or if you're volunteering or part of something else, just how do teams better approach that when you're saying, because obviously you have your different vocabularies, just as an example, so how do you approach that? How do you become more aware, or even signposting to different services? Just what's your experience with that, and how would somebody approach that?
So, I mean, cultural differences is one of the biggest challenges in relation to supporting individuals and talking about mental health. We've certainly come up against some very challenging issues in relation to culture through the charity, and having conversations in countries where culturally it is still very much unacceptable to talk about mental health, and hearing some very, very difficult things to listen to. So when we're dealing with a team that the team is all within one locale. So, for example, if you've got a remote team across the US or a remote team across the UK, generally you're going to have less of an issue in relation to cultural differences. But of course, we are very much multicultural. Certainly, many countries now are multicultural. So that's not always going to be the case. You do need to obviously be aware of the language that you're using. It may be that you might communicate via Slack, and you might use an abbreviation, and that abbreviation may be offensive for some individuals. So it's an awareness of the team that you're working with is certainly needed, and an awareness of your communication. Certainly when it comes to remote teams, communication is where it will live and die. You can never really over communicate when it comes to a remote team. I think if you're starting to think that you're over communicating, you're probably just about starting to get your level of communication right. So much.
So as an example of some cultural misunderstanding or not understanding, what is signposting? Because that's not a term we use in the US. I mean, I think I got it from context, but why don't you explain it?
Sure. So signposting, sorry, again, it's that assumption of knowledge which we need to be aware of. And so we use the term signposting as in I might have a conversation with an individual and say, actually, I think it's appropriate for you to speak to a professional within the NHS, National Health Services here in the UK. So I'm going to find a phone number, I'm going to find a website address, and I'm going to signpost you. So I'm going to give you that information and say, look, this is probably the best place for you to start this or take the next steps in relation to this conversation. So it's about the kind of literal signpost of that. I'm going to signpost that individual to the next step in their journey. We
might call that referring.
Yes.
Here, like refer you to this organization or that. Okay. Just wanted to clear that up in case anybody was listening and did, like I said, pretty clear through the context, but you don't want to make assumptions either.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. I think that level of kind of assumed knowledge is something that we come up against on a daily basis. We need to just generally it's something to be very, very aware of, but more so when it comes to remote teams, because you tend to have less context around you. We might sit in a room and suddenly the context of the body language and the various other elements that we can pick up on will bring that down and enable the what you're saying to make sense. Whereas simply if I was just to type, I need to signpost you to in a text message, you've lost all context. You've lost what does that mean?
Absolutely. I'm going to put this next one up there. That looks familiar to you, Dan, does it not?
It does.
Why don't you talk about how people can contribute to the organization?
Absolutely, yeah. So fund.bigorangeheart.org. We are a registered charity. We do rely on public donations and companies supporting us through either corporate donations or through sponsorship. We are continually looking for ways to develop our services to support the communities better. That unfortunately does take money. We need to be open and discuss money, as difficult as it can be for certainly me as a Brit sometimes. They've got that cultural stigma of talking about money. This does cost money, and it costs quite a bit for us. I mean, we've just released our monthly average expenses through 2019. Now we delivered a little over 7,500 hours of free support through 2019. That came in at a cost of £10,251 average per month to deliver that. So our support is coming in at a cost of just £16 an hour. Now I say just because to deliver mental health support does cost or can cost considerably more. And we're working with many organizations and many ways of delivering this support, but we can't continue to do that unless we have financial support from the community through public donations and from the business community through sponsorship and through corporate donations. $10 a month will make a massive difference. Cumulatively, if we can get $10 a month from just the individuals that attend our events, then we will fund this charity. We will continue to deliver that free support for our communities, for the remote working communities. So I really would implore, if you have the ability at this stage, fund.bigorangeheart.org, and $10 a month will make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Equally, we do also support the message of being financially responsible at this time. We do recognise that it's a difficult time for many people. So there are other opportunities. If you're unable to donate $10 a month, then maybe consider volunteering some time. It's another opportunity for you to get involved and be part of it, if that is of interest to you.
Absolutely. And full disclosure too, the administration of Big Orange Heart is done by volunteers. It's the professional services for mental health that are not. So
absolutely, yes. So
just so people are aware of that. Wonderful. So what else would you like to share?
There's a lot going on at the moment within Big Orange Heart. There's a lot of projects that tend to happen between the community of volunteers. So we're always looking for individuals that are have a wide breadth of skills. It really does. There really are a lot of things that we're doing that incorporate the skills that often we have within the tech community and within the communities that we tend to spend a lot of time within. So if you're interested, bigorangeheart.org/volunteer is a great place to head over, and be honest about what you can do, and open
Absolutely.
up. If you can give an hour a week, an hour a month, then fantastic. It all does accumulate and does make a big difference for us to be able to continue to deliver this free support into the remote working communities. The messaging that we're doing, the supporting social media, supporting our marketing, supporting our web content, supporting our podcast, there are many opportunities, but there are also, as I've mentioned, a number of projects that are going on kind of behind the scenes that we hope to be able to bring to the community, that again need different skill sets, different abilities brought to the team. So
well, look at that. Thank you, Allie.
Thank you so much.
We love Allie. Allie's amazing. And if I might just be a little presumptuous, these are the people that make things work, and these are the people that I would personally give a shout out to, and I'm sure you echo that as well, Dan. But if people are interested in seeing who are the people who are making Big Orange Heart work, those are the people there on that page there. I'll tell you, the day that you added me, I was like, look, everybody, look. And I was sending the link to everybody. I'm on the team.
I'm so grateful. I mean, every single individual on there, and many more have given so much to enable us to be able to get to this point. Obviously, we started out as WPN Up. We focused specifically within the WordPress community, and is an incredibly important part of Big Orange Heart. This isn't, we're not going away from that community at all, but from the feedback we were receiving, from the conversations we were having, we needed to expand the individuals that were within the team and expand our ability to support. And it made sense. We'd always had a plan to be able to support a wider community, but obviously the situation with the current global crisis pushed up our timeline somewhat. But of course, that also meant that we needed to push up the number of team members and the number of people that were volunteering. And so I'm so grateful for every individual that has been through so much within WPN Up and into Big Orange Heart, because it was an incredible transitional period. In literally weeks, we turned around the charity from WPN.
It was dizzying to watch. Everything is. I'm in the private channel of the team, of course, and every day as you were sharing, and the next page, and the logo design happened within like a week. It was amazing to watch all of that go by. I was like, what did I just witness? Because I think there should have been like a checkered flag somewhere. It was impressive, truly.
it's and that's the kind of the fun side of what we're doing. You know, there's a lot. It's a difficult topic, and it can be a very hard subject to work within and to be talking about, but you know, there needs to be lightheartedness. There needs to be, you know, that kind of team togetherness, and it's something that we need to, you know, we continually need to work on. But you know, projects like that, you know, pivoting within a 4-week period, what for some might sound awful.
You were like, there's a challenge and I'm accepting it. What's that, Graham?
I was going to ask Dan, because we have kind of touched on it throughout the webinar, but just to maybe touch a little bit more, was the sort of the challenges that COVID has brought, unique challenges, but also what can we learn from that, sort of as individuals and organizations, how we've supported people and what support have individuals needed as well.
There's quite a lot there. In terms of learning, certainly as a charity, we've learned an awful lot. It's been an incredibly challenging time, as it has for so many millions of people. You know, we as I mentioned earlier, we saw it was actually more than a 310% increase in demand on the services, but that was actually coupled with a 90% decrease in public donations. That really hasn't picked up too much since. So from a financial perspective, this has been an incredibly difficult time. Unfortunately we've had to get to a situation where we have had to let go of a number of the professional services that we've been delivering because we simply don't have the funds in place right now. So there's been, you know, there's a lot of learnings through this that we are, you know, at a trustee level, you know, at the highest level, there's a lot of conversations going on about how, you know, how do we mitigate some of these issues and how do we, going forward, ensure that services can remain through moments of crisis. And obviously, this was a completely unprecedented and, you know, very, very difficult situation. But in terms of you know, learning for the community, it's been quite incredible to hear the response from some people, and you know how some people have struggled, and some of the challenges that people have come up against. Again, you know, because we are a global charity, we're dealing with, you know, individuals that are being supported differently by their governments and by their, you know, local authorities, and so we're seeing really quite different challenges for individuals. And that's meant, you know, we've had to, you know, be quite quick on our feet in relation to responding to some of those issues. And you know, it's definitely been a challenging time, but it's also meant that we've got, I think, a more resilient way of dealing with certain issues. So you know, I would never ever want this upon anyone, but we've had to learn, and you know, the charity will come through this, and the charity will remain through this. It's, you know, as difficult as it is when, you know, funds become incredibly tight and services have to, you know, we have to start paring back some of the non-essential services. For example, we've had to press pause on our Press Forward podcast at this stage because, you know, these funds need to be redirected in more appropriate places right now. Of course, that doesn't mean that the podcast isn't important. The podcast is incredibly important because it gets our message out there. It gets, you know, it enables people to become aware of what we're doing. So, you know, it's certainly not a non-essential, but you know, when it comes to individuals' well-being, we need to make sure that obviously that is the highest priority for us. So there's been you know, a lot for us to learn through this period. Absolutely.
One of those things that I've seen too is our blog at Big Orange Heart has a lot of advice. It's a good word, but ways to manage being a remote worker, as well as some destigmatization of mental health and just general good wishes, things like that. And the blog is not one person blogging. We get all kinds of articles submitted all over. So I would highly recommend people who are exploring to give a look through there. There's a lot in there that we have an article about COVID and how to navigate these difficult times for sure. And so I wanted to share that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is the something we really try to encourage is the voice of the community. This isn't about the organisation pushing stuff. We want to try and encourage the community to be part of this, and the community to be Big Orange Heart, be at the heart of it.
And then the last thing I want to share here too before we sign off is the centurycares.org website. We are doing these webinars at least one a month. We have 2 this month, so we have one now and one in 2 weeks. The next one is with Chris Badgett from Lifter LMS, so we're going to talk about learning management systems. But we also have all kinds of fundraising ideas and other ways to support one another and the community at centurycares.org. So I did want to make sure that I shared that as well.
I think it's awesome what you're doing as a team. This is a great opportunity, at an organisational level to give back to the community. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been fun too. It's a nice way to be able to use our talents in ways other than just marketing and growing the business, but also to be part of the community and give back. So that's one of the things that we love to do, which is great. Excellent. So any last words, Dan? Anything else that you'd like to share? Obviously, support one another and support the charity if you can.
Very much so. Yes, it really is. Look out for each other. If as we've already discussed, if an individual's if their patterns are changing, reach out. That question, how are you? Just drop it out to them. See what the response is, and if the response is a response that you're not comfortable with, or it's something you're struggling with, bigorangeheart.org/support or contact. Various ways to get in contact with us, and we can help, whether it is a signpost referral or whether it is a direct support from us.
Absolutely.
And again, fund.bigorangeheart.org if you have the ability. Please.
Absolutely. Thank you. Exactly. Well, Dan, thank you not only for being with us here today, but thank you for your support of our community and everything that you do for remote workers and for the mental health of the WordPress and greater technology community. I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for being here today. And you as well, Graham. Thanks for being here with me co-hosting. I know I talk a lot more than you. Sorry.
All right.
But thanks for being here.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's good to be here with both of you.
Fantastic. Well, it's good to see you both. Awesome. All right. Well, until the next episode of our next webinar, I see I'm a podcaster. The next episode is just something that rolls right off my tongue. Our next webinar in a few weeks. We'll see you all in the community. Please feel free to reach out if we can help at all.